Bloomberg Audio Studios.
Podcasts, radio, news.
You're listening to Bloomberg Businessweek with Massar and Tim Stenovec on Bloomberg Radio.
There's something that caught our attention. A Bloomberg opinion column earlier this year wrote, in 2022, the median black family had just 15.7% the wealth of the median white family. Going by mean wealth, it's a similar 15.5%. This is according to the Federal Reserve. They put out a triennial survey of consumer finances, Tim.
As the column by our own Justin Fox noted, quote, if current trends continue, the percentage will still be in that general territory millions of years from now. Math is fun, but it can deliver some pretty depressing results.
Yeah, absolutely. So working on reducing the racial wealth gap, Nichol King, she is Executive Director of Community Banking at JPMorgan Chase. She joins us here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio. Really nice to have you here. We talk a lot about this wealth gap, right? It's no longer just even income gap, but wealth gap. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. It's so nice to meet you both. Thank you so much for having me. Excited to be in conversation about a topic that is incredibly passionate for me.
Well, tell me about that passion and what you guys are doing, and tell me about like the case that you see, the problem that you see in front of you. Let's start there.
Absolutely. So we at JPMorgan Chase really believe that inclusive communities and environments, our business does better. It's just, it's not philanthropy is really the right thing to do. So when we think about financial health, it's not really spoken about in households. In talking about my own experience with that, financial health education wasn't spoken about at my dinner table. So as a result, a lot of people in different communities do not have access to the information. So we're at JPMorgan Chase. We are empowering communities with financial health education, going from community banking to community building. So we're really proud about the work that we're doing.
You know, it's interesting. When we were preparing for this, one of our producers, Elizabeth, sent me this article from the Wall Street Journal about how JPMorgan Chase is building more branches, yes, which I thought was really fascinating. And Jamie Dimon has talked about this a lot. And it actually talks about the Harlem branch. And you're known as Harlem's banker.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about the importance of brick and mortar, the importance of actually having a community space for people to go to in an environment where so much is done online?
Absolutely. So let me take a step back and really share the journey to the Harlem Community Center. So 5 years ago, JPMorgan was reimagining how we can support communities that have historically been overlooked. And Harlem was the first branch, Harlem Community Center.
Overlooked or just ignored?
You
Sorry,
know that
I hate to be so harsh, but
Carol, you are absolutely right. Ignored.
Yeah.
And we really proud ourselves on not ignoring any community. So Harlem, what we did was we met with community stakeholders and really asked what are some challenges of the community, so this way we can put programming in place. And we took that feedback. We created the first of its kind community center. So it's a traditional branch, so you can go in and do your everyday banking, but what really makes it special is that it has a community space, and a community space where community managers do financial health workshops. We even have a space for small businesses to do pop-ups. So we're really excited and proud that Harlem is actually celebrating its 5-year anniversary, and we've opened 17 community centers across the country.
Wow.
The 18th one is coming in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn in October. So these are community centers that were built with the community in mind, and just really excited about the work that we're doing.
Nichol, what goes on in the community centers? Give us an idea.
Yeah, so residents can come in, and what's best about this, I must say, Carol, is that you don't have to be a Chase customer, but you can come in and get empowered and understand the basics of budgeting, why it's important to manage your credit wisely, and even if you want to save for your child's college education, we provide those workshops and the education for you to do so.
It's really interesting because you say it's not a philanthropy, right? This is a business.
No.
So at the end of the day, you obviously want to get more customers.
Absolutely.
How do you do this in a way that balances financial education, but also offering it in a way that provides people the tools that they need to make decisions independent of whatever bank they use?
Yes. So with this model, what we did was we actually created products, services, and tools to meet the community where they're at. And one product that we're really excited and proud about is our secure banking product. And that product is really meant to help folks that historically not have banked. And what we've seen a today, we've seen a 16% increase of those types of accounts open in community centers, while that account is offered at all of our branches. In particular, we've seen a 16% increase at our community centers. So that makes us proud that we are actually helping customers understand financial health, but also giving them access to banking.
Nichol, why is it that people are still unbanked or like for the folks who finally open up an account with you guys? What was it that was holding it back? Was it that they didn't know how to do it, that they were rejected and not allowed to open up accounts? What was it?
So I would say what we hear is just, I didn't know. I didn't have access to this information. So that's what our community centers do. We provide communities opportunity to get access to the information in a way that is relatable to the community. So we meet the community where they're at.
How do you think about this in terms of the stats that Carol and I shared at the top? The median black family having 15.7% of the wealth of the median white family, literally, as Justin Fox noted, could take millions of years, and it'll still be in that general territory. Is that something during our lifetimes that can be solved?
So I wish I had a crystal ball, but I don't. But what I do know is that we as a firm, JP Morgan, we're doing our part. And our part is working with local community-based organizations to bring this information to their constituency, as well as opening community centers to make it accessible to the community. So I don't have a crystal ball, but we are doing our part.
Does it seem like to you it's getting better?
Absolutely.
More than just anecdotally?
Yes, I see that first, I'm from Harlem, so I'm in the community day in and day out. So I see folks that historically would not step into a branch, stepping into our community centers because they feel more comfortable. The community centers are welcoming, and we're creating and doing programming that they understand and meets them where they're at.
How does like an account that's open turn into a wider relationship? And I think about one of the things that we've talked about, the wealth gaps between races, is that, you know, a lot of white families historically have been able to easily get a mortgage, right? And that's the beginning of creating some wealth, right? And that wealth then gets passed down. Is there an account that's opened by a black community member? Does it turn into then maybe it becomes a mortgage and some other things? Like, how does that grow?
Yeah, so what's really important to us is that the whole relationship. So it doesn't matter where you're at on your financial journey, we can help you. So it can start with you opening up a regular checking account, and then you have a banker that's assigned to you, and then we help you along your journey. So whatever your goals are, we actually have services and resources to help you meet them.
What have you seen with sort of the evolution of that relationship, depending on who you're getting into the pipeline, for lack of a better term?
No, that's a great question. It's amazing. So I've seen situations where someone would come in and did not know what their credit score was actually scared to even face it, to a year and a half later saying, oh my God, Nichol, my credit score is above 700. I was able to pay down my debt by attending a budgeting and savings course. So we're seeing incremental change, but most of all, we're changing folks' lives and really making them understand that your past financial trauma does not necessarily have to dictate your future financial success.
Nichol, how does all of this that you're seeing make you think about financial literacy? Because it's something, I've been doing this a while, and I feel like every few years we talk about, whether it's with kids or with different communities, the importance of, education in general, but having a financial education and starting earlier. Like you said, those conversations around the dinner table, or understanding what goes into running a household, or the importance of saving money and then ultimately of investing. How do you think about that more broadly and what we need in society?
Yeah, so our 150 community managers across the country, Carol, is doing just that. They're working with students from elementary to college. helping them understand the importance and the financial implications of their decisions. So we partner with a lot of local schools to really embed financial health education into their curriculum.
And so into the actual schools. And
into
stuff.
the actual schools.
So it helps the community
So it helps
a wider
the community.
reach.
Absolutely.
We're speaking with Nichol King, Executive Director of Community Banking at JP Morgan Chase. She's here in the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio. We recently had, to Carol's point, Nichol, Lindsay Cormack on our show. She's an associate professor of political science at Stevens Institute of Technology. She's got a new book out, How to Raise a Citizen and Why It's Up to You to Do It. And it's all about civics education and teaching kids early about civics education. We had this conversation with her about, teaching kids around the dinner table the importance of government, the importance of like different branches of government. You mentioned schools and doing this in schools. What's a parent's responsibility around a dinner table or to instill financial education and financial wisdom into their kids?
I love that question because one of the things that we really focus on is impacting the whole household when it comes to this education. So while, we go into schools, when we go into the schools, we actually work with the staff of the respective schools as well as the parents. So we like to call it, we turn one segment opportunity into multiple by way of education.
It's cool.
Yeah, it is really cool. What do you do when an individual has some trouble? So open an account, maybe they get a credit card through you guys and there's some trouble. How do you work with them through that?
Everything is really about educating. So again, when we think about a person getting a credit card, we definitely encourage them to attend a credit workshop first. You need to understand the fundamentals of credit before you get the product. Because this way, the more educated you are on the product, you're going to be able to use and manage the credit wisely and use it accordingly. And understanding the difference between wants and needs. We really focus on that as well.
How does JP Morgan, I think about what you guys are doing specifically and tapping into different communities, and it sounds like you continue to grow the communities that in setting up these community
centers.
Offices and centers. How do they kind of continue to bring that thinking kind of more broadly into the company?
Well, as I mentioned before, it is not philanthropy. This is a business imperative. In fact,
a market that's largely untapped.
Right, and I'm glad you said that because when we look at the data and we look at the statistics of the labor statistics, we know that Black families are growing, right? Minority families are growing. In fact, the Labor Bureau says by 2044, the majority of households will be minority.
Yeah.
Right. So to answer that question, we're really intentional about tapping into the market and really helping them understand that JP Morgan is truly the bank for all, but meeting you where you're at.
Right.
So it's interesting to hear you say that because we're in this environment where AI is just dominating. And I'm actually doing a panel in Atlanta next week for Bloomberg Live about the business value of AI, focusing specifically on customer service, chatbots, and essentially companies doing what they can do to prevent a phone call from a customer. So using chatbots, using AI on menus on phones, identifying a customer when they call in. And that's sort of the new school approach to customer relationship management. What you're talking about is so old school. How do you keep track of a customer who starts with the experience of a community center, but then needs relationship advice or needs advice, financial advice rather, at a different moment where they're using their mobile phone, where they're calling a company that has so many employees, so many customer service representatives to make sure they're talking to somebody who can actually identify with them?
Yep. So what we do is, as I mentioned before, your personal banker is the anchor of that relationship, but we do have online banking tools and resources that complement that relationship. So if a client needs to gain access, let's say, to their credit score, they can look at Credit Journey. If they want to build a budget, they can use Budget Builder. So we definitely have online resources and tools that really complement that in-person relationship and to help them stay abreast of their financial resources.
We've been talking with Nichol King and we appreciate it.
Hey, when I was preparing for this next segment, I started doing research. I realized just how different this conversation would be today versus just a couple of years ago. I was looking for articles about how companies are attracting and retaining underrepresented professionals. I was looking for the hard data. That's what we want to do here at Bloomberg. We want to find the numbers. There were plenty of those articles from 2021 and 2022. And then I started to see this pattern that emerged last year. Much of the discussion on the topic has been around the blowback to DEI initiatives. Here's a sample of headlines just over the last few months. Harley reveals ongoing DEI review after activist attack. Corporate America braces for DEI's death if Trump wins election. Best Buy, J&J, Lazard, among the companies downplaying DEI goals. Wall Street banks retreat on DEI as backlash snowballs.
Yeah, so, this brings us to our guest, which is, we're really curious what she has to say about it. Devika Brij is, in her career, she was at Google and LinkedIn. She's the founder of Brij the Gap Consulting. It's a firm that works to, in their words, develop, advance, and retain underrepresented employees and their leaders through career advancement, self-advocacy strategies, and personalized coaching.
She's also got a new book out. It's called Thrive in Color, How to Master Self-Advocacy and Command Your Career as an Underrepresented Professional. She joins us from Atlanta. Devika, it's good to have you. Look, I want to clarify, what you do is not DEI. In fact, you make the point that people confuse DEI with learning and development. That said, are you concerned with the pushback on DEI efforts that people from underrepresented backgrounds could be held back even more when it comes to the workplace?
I feel like I was more concerned than I am now. And the reason I say that is because, I think, yes, there are companies that have completely backpedaled and have determined that, DEI is not going to be a priority within their business. But then I'm seeing a lot of my partners and prospect corporate partners that I'm talking with. And really what they're doing is either restructuring DEI, rethinking DEI, and really putting purpose and intention and meaning behind it. And I think that's what needed to have been done back in 2020 when DEI started to explode across workplaces in corporate America. I think people were just following suit. Corporations were following suit. Leaders were copying what they were seeing. And now I think people are taking a time to step back and actually think about the true intent. And so I'm not as discouraged as I was. I just think that there's a reshifting happening.
So smarter, Devika, in terms of the approach now?
Depends on the company. The ones I'm talking to are being smarter about it and really establishing a purpose and a meaning behind it and thinking about strategy. And others are completely washing their hands. It really just depends corporation to corporation.
If you're an underrepresented individual at a company, the reason you sometimes feel like is you're not part of the conversation, you don't have a seat at the table. There's a lot of reasons that you don't feel like you're part of the group. How do you change that?
It takes a lot of self-awareness and work. And the premise behind the book is really not crumbling when you see systems that are set up against you or unfair situations or other individuals having an advantage. Underrepresented individuals have more power than they think. It just takes more work unlearning what we have been taught over the course of our life, whether it was through previous generations, cultures, especially if you're first or second generation immigrant who is now relocated to North America and things are done differently. You have to take the time to unlearn and understand how leaders are making decisions within each corporation. And what we do know is that there are so many unfair circumstances and challenges that are out there that are hard to navigate. But, when you can operate powerfully within the areas that you do have control over, I think that there's a lot of success to be gained as well. And so the book really outlines how to show up in a way that resonates with leaders and decision makers while, still equating for the lived experiences and nuanced challenges that underrepresented individuals face in the workplace.
Well, Devika, you were one of those leaders. You were at Google, you were at LinkedIn, then you became CEO and founder of Brij the Gap Consulting. What was your experience at these companies?
I enjoyed my time at both companies. I think they had really great cultures. They had really great leaders. They had leaders that needed some development work as well. I mean, no workplace is perfect. I think for me, I was really cognizant of the challenges and cognizant of the fact that I had to move differently, unlearn, also learn how to show up in these really competitive places to accelerate my career. And so I loved my experience, but that doesn't mean that it, didn't come with its own challenges.
So, it's interesting. In the book, you talk about sometimes you have to forgive the ones who hurt you, right, as you go through this process. I do feel like sometimes we're all learning at the same time and we're going to make mistakes. So did you have an instance where you had to forgive somebody in order to kind of figure your way forward?
Absolutely. So when I left my employer back in 2017, about a year before I started Bridge the Gap Consulting, it was not, my decision. I was unjustly terminated from my position from a leader who was leading and operating with bias, when it comes down to it. And after I had spent several years, had created a tremendous brand for myself, had great client relationships as a sales leader, internal relationships, it was a hard blow. It felt like a punch to the gut. But it was releasing that individual, forgiving them. And, I'm grateful that that experience happened to me now because it helped me create Bridge the Gap. I've been able to work with thousands of underrepresented professionals across all demographics and really great corporate partners to do tremendous work. And had that not happened, I wouldn't be here today. And so forgiveness is key. And then really thinking about how these challenges maybe have worked in our favor. What we've learned is really important to progressing in one's career.
Do you think it's easier to move the needle on these types of issues when you are kind of creating your own firm outside and then hired by companies versus being on the inside?
Absolutely. I think one thing we have to recognize is that employee feedback, whether you're a leader or not, internally can have repercussions to that. And so what I often tell corporate partners is, hey, you can put as many workplace survey, in front of their employees, or try to gauge what their experience is, but they're never going to be 1,000%, transparent with their feedback because they might be worried about what the repercussions are, including termination or just fear of perception. And so when corporate partners are working with third parties like myself, we're able to really extract what the true experience is for the employee base, not only help them, but also help, our corporate partners in leadership positions understand what could potentially be changed across the workforce that will help develop and increase retention of their top talent.
A member of our audience is getting in touch with a question right now about how we pivot from having DEI be a political talking point, he writes, and change the narrative to highlight that studies show that inclusion and diversity actually lead to better decision making.
It really is up to the leader to embrace that. And I think that from the top down, not only does the C-suite need to really understand that DEI does impact the business for better, but also, remember who they're reporting to. They're reporting to board members, they're reporting to shareholders, and there's a lot of pressure that comes from that. And so leaders have to really take a hard and firm stance and really advocate for why this is necessary across the workplace. And until they're able to do that, DEI is always going to be held back. Now, there are certain corporations that are doing tremendous work still, and certain corporations that need some help. But really, it is up to the leader to understand why this is so tremendous and impactful across the workforce and be able to stand their ground when communicating it to external decision makers and influencers.
Really great stuff. Listen, thank you so much, Devika. We appreciate your time. Devika Brij, she's the founder of Brij the Gap Consulting. She's got a new book out, Thrive in Color, How to Master Self-Advocacy and Command Your Career as an Underrepresented Professional. So be sure to check it out. A lot of great stories and anecdotes and also advice. This is Bloomberg Radio.